30 days, 30 nights of sleep paralysis, nightmares, and a dark entity watching me from the ceiling. Here's what happened. Back in the mid 2000s, I started to experience insomnia a lot. I had vivid nightmares, a lot involving my family, and waking up in my room, and just dreams within dreams, inception type shite. And yeah, they were very vivid dreams. I had reoccurring ones too that it almost felt like a premonition. I had this one reoccurring dream where I was driving through the back roads in Malibu with my family, and I was in the back seat, like in the trunk area of like an SUV that, used to ride in those sometimes as a kid, put out a blanket. And we were going through these windy country roads, not country, but just, windy back roads, Malibu, canyon type setting, canyon country. And always I had this dream where we were driving with my whole family in the car, and we just go off the side of this mountain. And then, right upon impact, I would always wake up. And I had that dream about like 4 or 5 times. And then I remember one day I had that feeling of deja vu. And I never know with deja vu. It's like, is this just, did I live this in a previous life, a previous timeline where, this happened and I died, and then I shifted to the timeline where I am alive, and I just have this old memory of it. So I was having a lot of dreams like that. To get to the topic of the story, during this time in the mid 2000s, I started to see shadows in bed when I started to see shadows that were swirling on the ceiling when I would lay down and go to bed. And I didn't at first really get like a feeling from it. It kind of was just like, I felt like my eyes were adjusting to the darkness. So that's what I thought, in my 10-year-old brain, or 8 or 9, I think this started happening. Yeah, like 9, 10, 9, 11. I started to see that. So I would lay down at night, getting ready to go to bed, staring at the ceiling, and like clockwork for this whole month, for 30 days, I would see shadows swirling on the ceiling, almost like if you've seen in water when there's sharks swimming around, prey. Basically, I was the prey, they were the predator. Power dynamic. And at first I did not, like I said, did not get any type of feeling. I just felt like it was my eyes adjusting to the darkness. But then later, as this progressed in the month, I started to feel just dread when I would see them. Just a shitty feeling. And I didn't, correlate at the time. I was like, why am I having nightmares every night? And I was seeing these shadows and just telling myself, this is probably just my eyes adjusting. And every night I was having nightmares and sleep paralysis. It was my first time dealing with that. And I thought I was dying. I thought I was like, I'd seen the documentary. I think it's called The Nightmare, but it's a documentary on sleep paralysis. And it does feel like, if you haven't experienced it before, it feels like you're, either you're having a stroke or just this trapped feeling in your body where it feels like you're violently thrashing around in your body, but you're just still. And I've looked up the whole entire thing of just, it's your body, it's your mind adjusting, and you think you're in danger, but your body hasn't woken up yet, but your mind's awake. And like, it has to be bullshit. That doesn't make, why is everyone seeing the same thing? Why is everyone seeing this shadowy figure or these like archetypes I think it's something ancient, and I think it's something evil that's just been there. And I think that this, just like good and evil, they're both eternal. And there's something that when we slip into this state of deep relaxation, a REM sleep, we enter this other realm, if you want to call it that. I'm not trying to get fucking hippy dippy like DMT type shit, but I'm not knocking that. Never tried it, but it is something that we experience every night. And for 30 days I just experienced nonstop nightmares that were getting increasingly vivid and terrifying. And finally the shadows moved off the ceiling, and I was seeing them in corners, taking the place of the typical like hat man. I'm trying to remember, this is so long ago, I'm trying to remember if it was like a hat man, but it was the silhouette of a person. And the room is already dark. But this thing is darker. It's blacker than black. At the time I was going through this, I was researching as much as I could, early internet. This was the time of the library, so I was reading books on cryptids, and I saw, the famous paintings of the demon on the chest and the hag. I never saw anything like that. It was always just this shadow entity and these swirling shadows. It almost looked like a lava lamp, like a computer screensaver, like the typical like lava lamp, but just shadows swimming on the ceiling. And as I got more into researching it, I was trying to figure out how to wake myself up from these dreams, because they had become my sleep was so fucked up at the time. It was so bad. I remember just trying to stay awake as long as I could, and just reading. I was drawing. I remember one time I was drawing with a Sharpie, and I fell asleep, and when I woke up, the Sharpie had bled all over me, so I was just covered in, I think it was like a turquoise Sharpie at the time, just covered in that, and my blanket was all covered in it. But one dream that stood out to me when I was going through this was like probably the scariest dream. And now that I look back at it, and it'd probably still be scary today, but at the time you're 8 or 9. And I remember it was a typical dream where I woke up in my bed, and I was in the setting of my room. And at the time, when me and my brother both shared a room, we had a bunk beds at the time. Now the top bunk. And this was back when we lived in the same room, but in this time I had my own bed at the time. And I woke up in the bunk bed setting, and I see it was like a third person view of me watching myself in the room, and I was being chased by this Freddy Krueger, like a bootleg Freddy Krueger character, and he was chasing me all through the house, and he was gaining speed on me. And I remember running up, going through the hallways, running, trying to like dodge him, and finally making my way up to the top bunk, and he was on the bottom, like looking at me. And I'll never forget, I was just crying, trying to like wake myself up. And I'll never forget seeing his disfigured face, like very, just like this burnt, disfigured entity laughing at me. And he's like,
"You're not gonna wake up until you trade me your blood."
That didn't sound good.
"You're not gonna wake up until you trade me your blood."
and he was holding out his claw. He had the typical Freddy claw. And I remember I was just so scared. I wanted to wake up, that it was like that painting where the two hands are touching. The two fingers are like touching, and I touched my finger onto the glove and pricked my finger and just woke up like, and just this feeling of something taken from me. That's what I felt. I don't know if this is like a metaphor, but also looking back during this time, I was feeling so drained of energy, and it could, just being just up for, barely sleeping for this month. But now that I'm thinking about it, this entity could have been, feeding on my energy, draining me, energy vampire. And yeah, later, just dealing with this, researching more, I figured out how to wake myself up, and I would be able to recognize that I was dreaming, either looking at text or looking at like the typical looking at like a clock, and like the numbers don't make sense, or anything that can give you, it was something like, it's pre-AI. So you look at an AI image and you're like, are the fingers messed up, or are the faces in the background distorted? So you're looking for clues like that. And I was able to tell myself, I'd be like, okay, on the count of 10, I'm going to wake myself up. And I would count to 10, and sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. But I would always just, reassure myself that I am going to wake up, and on the count of 10, I'll wake up. And another weird sense, like a sensory thing I remember from this whole sleep paralysis situation, was that it felt like there was a like a buzz of electricity in the air, or when I would wake up, like it felt like my head was buzzing, like vibrating, and I heard like a cracking noise, like a crackling sound. That's one thing I do remember. So I'm not too sure what if anyone else has experienced that. But another time when I was going through this, I used to sleep on my stomach. I don't anymore, but I had slept on my stomach one night, and I fell asleep with my face in the pillow, and I experienced sleep paralysis. So I had, I woke up and my mind was awake, but my body was paralyzed, and my face was in the pillow, and I literally felt like I was being suffocated. And I was able to wiggle out of that one. But after that, I told myself I got to stop sleeping on my stomach. Became a back sleeper after that. But yeah, I did. That was my time experiencing. I don't see the shadows anymore. I did have an experience, I'd say probably 8 years ago, with seeing a shadow figure again. It was at a friend's house. I was talking to him, and his house is pretty haunted. It's an old house, probably from the 70s. And I was talking to him, and I looked down because I felt someone looking at me, and there was this like kid-sized one at my feet, like laying on its stomach, like peering up at me. And it was straight out of a movie where what's that? What is that? Mulholland Drive with David Lynch, where he sees the witch and at the back of the diner. It felt like that. Like I had this like startling, like primordial fear just over to, like, I remember just kind of stepping back, like shaking. And that was the last time I saw something like that. But yeah, for 30 days, 30 nights, I was battling in the night realm, the shadow realm. And yeah, I haven't experienced it since, and I hope I don't. Hopefully I don't, I'm talking about this, I'm gonna have it again. But yeah, I don't know. I think just don't be afraid of it as much as it tries to get a rise out of you, and you gotta be like that that video or that picture of the monkey and the lion, where the lion's yelling and the monkey's just like because yeah, don't give this fear your power. But that's it, and I appreciate you for listening, and let me know if you like this style of video. I'm just trying it out, and if you liked, give this video a like and subscribe, and maybe I'll do some more topics that I've experienced. Thanks.